Oh boy, it's been a while. But I'll get to that at the end of the video, not now. Because at this current moment, this video is about Elden Ring's medieval boomstick, aka the spread crossbow. Just look at its sleek design of two crossbows duct taped to one another. Shoots like a sawed-off double-barrel shotgun, but it's even less efficient. I'll talk about its troubles a bit later when I actually obtain it. For now, all you need to know is that I'm going to be using it for a pretty much majority of the game. I mean, this is a challenge run of it. The only time I'm not going to be using it is pretty much here at the start of the video until I actually get the weapon. And the process to get it will be a fun one. Also, I'm going to be doing this rune level 1, so it will be a bit of a process. But now, as always, it's time to start the process of this challenge run. So this is Wornout Gamer 4, and make sure to sit back, relax, watch and or listen as I beat Elden Ring using the medieval boomstick. First thing though, I need to obtain it. And usually I would just spawn the weapon in. It cuts the hassle of having to deal with whatever obstacles are in the way to get the item. And man, it's two pretty big obstacles because the crossbow we want is currently behind the DLC. But this time around I'm not cutting that fun out. So for the first section of this video, it's time to try to get into the DLC. Limitations, because I love myself. I'm going to be ignoring Melina at the start. So it's time to play this the old Dark Souls way, getting my cardio in. Doing it this way took quite a bit of time. Luckily for me though, running away and ignoring problems works out pretty well. That is, of course, if I'm not in Caelid. Because everything here in Caelid sucks. Trying to unlock the map just by walking is a bit of a pain. Time to continue making progress. You know, considering that the challenge run weapon is behind two pretty big bosses, it means that I'm going to have to arm myself, and I have just the plan. I'm going to be using this little light crossbow, upgrading it here in the anvil because that's the only way I can upgrade weapons right now, and I'm going to be using this in order to farm for an even worse crossbow, and that would be the soldier's crossbow. I ended up getting two of these because I thought it would be pretty awesome dual wielding crossbows. Please know I'm just going to be using these two dinky crossbows until I get my actual spread shotgun crossbow. You know, funny enough, in hindsight, I didn't even need to use these crossbows. At least it gave me something to do in the meantime until I got my run weapon. Also, whoever decided to put a message right here where the item is, I hate you. You, sir, are quite devious. Here at the anvil, I can only level it up to +2. But good thing EG exists, because that is a limitation I would not like to go through. For now, I just gather some talismans that I need. And one of the major ones is this blue dancer's charm. Since I'm going to be running naked most of the time, any increase to my physical damage is very welcoming. And of course, anything else that increases my bolt damage for my crossbow is very much needed. And now one last thing before I have to start dealing with bosses. And that's helping Uriah so I can get an Astral War for way later in the game. And since right now I'm kinda worthless in fighting NPCs, all I can do now is kick. Uriah will be doing most of the work. It's actually pretty funny how much of a nuisance I can be with just a kick. After our comrade goes down, I'm left with the NPC. But with his defeat, I get what I need, which is Raptor of the Mists. Great, I'm gonna use you for literally only one instance. With that over with, I farm for some beast bones, get the crafting recipes for all the bolt ammo that I'm going to need. Now I'll make a little quick trip to Altus Plateau in order to trigger the Radon Festival. All I need to do here is trigger a grace and I'm set. After doing a bit of flower picking at Jarberg, and now it's time to deal with Rotted Radon. This is going to be a very uneventful fight, with the word fight being a pretty inaccurate term for the situation. All I pretty much did was poison him, and while he was distracted with the actual people that's fighting him, I rotted him and ran a marathon away from him. Of course, Radon was not very happy about that and flew up in the air. That meant nothing though, because the rot pretty quickly butchered his health, and as I kept my distance, just respawning more allies, and after about a minute and a half after he decided to cosplay as a meteor, Radon goes down. Ah yes, the good old, somewhat cheesy method of taking him down. Sometimes you can't beat the classics. Thank you, Blide. I do aim to please with my fighting methods. It was a glorious battle of me sending wave after wave of my men towards Radon, as I stayed at a distance to scope the situation. And now with one requirement fulfilled to access the DLC, it's time for the other one. And here I'm gonna have to bite the bullet and accept Melena's offer, and in order to make him move, I need to meet the two fingers, as I'm pretty sure that's the only way I can progress Vare's quest. Alright Vare, give me those disgusting fingers. Time to complete this quest the old-fashioned way, aka the online way. And also this is the easiest way, which is very helpful for my character, which is only rune level 1. After that I get the napkin, which of course requires the ketchup stains that only a living being can provide, or in this case currently a dead one. And with that, onwards to Mohg's palace. There's a very easy way of dealing with Mohg, but before I do that method, I want to try something. Before I take the easy way out, I of course want to fight Mohg. It's been months since I last played this game, so I want to see if I'm still good at fighting him. And in order to make things go a bit smoother, I get the Purifying Crystal tier. And now it's time to fight the man that beat the Diddler allegations. Alright, so first attempt was kind of abysmal. But the second attempt though went significantly better. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not used to doing fights as rune level 1. And with my skills being kinda rusty, it kinda doesn't help. But hey, I think I was doing well enough. And that's a win in my books because the original plan wasn't even to fight him legitimately. All this was a test of skill that I somewhat failed. No, strike that. I failed it. But as I say again, this wasn't the OG plan. No, the OG plan is a big cheesy one. And that requires me to get into the fight to load Mohg. And after that I just save and quit and go back down the massive elevator. Do a little bit of precise jumping here. It is not as easy as it looks, I'll tell you that. And from here on out I just follow a set path. Also, you might have realized that I have a seal on my right hand. I need this, including the heal incantation, or any other incantation that has the heal incantation animation on it. Because in order to do this cheese, I need to be in that exact animation. And I have to use the incantation just as I'm sliding down the rock here. And here I just wait for like 2 minutes while holding down the button. And eventually Mohg is defeated. Oh yeah, this is some big old cheese. And with that, access to the DLC has now been granted. Ah, I love cheese. Yay, we are here at Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree. And because it's an easy get, the spread crossbow is now mine. And now the challenge run officially starts. But now I've ran into a major problem. So soon already. I do not have the stats to wield it. The strength requirement doesn't really matter. I can just two-hand it. But the dex requirement is a problem. Another thing, I compared this to a sawed-off double-barrel shotgun. But in all honesty, this is more of a blunderbuss more than an actual shotgun. It is very inaccurate. And also ammo efficiency is absolutely abysmal. 10 bolts per trigger pull. Oh well, it's a type of boomstick overall. Just that it's a pretty painful one to actually use. Temporarily, I'm going to be using the Dexterity Knot Crystal tier in order to deal with the dexterity requirements. And currently, my main objective is to upgrade this thing. This thing unfortunately upgrades via smithing stone, so it's gonna take a bit to actually upgrade. I have the smithing bow 1 and 2, so I can buy the early stage smithing stones. But when it comes to the late stage smithing stones, I have to go find them. Thankfully in the DLC there's quite an abundance of them. Pretty worthless in a normal playthrough, but here in the challenge run I am thankful for it. Also while I'm here at it, I'm collecting Shadow Tree fragments. And that of course makes my life a lot easier here in the DLC. Because getting one-shotted is not fun for no one. Even though there's still an incredibly high chance I'm just gonna get one-shotted by the bosses. Honestly, the Shadow Tree fragments are just for the damage bonus. But that's for later though, because right now I'm just going to be doing normal Legacy Elden Ring. Everything currently being done in DLC is either for later or for upgrades. The collecting of items that I need is pretty easy, unfortunately very time consuming. And with what I've accumulated, the spread crossbow is now at plus 22. And with the medieval boomstick being pretty dangerous now in the damage department, it's now time to deal with the dexterity problem and find a much more permanent solution to it. This crossbow is not that good for single target, but when you're dealing with multiple threats, it's actually pretty okay. And with Commander O'Neill defeated, I get what I need to start Millicent's quest. And all I require is the reward at the beginning, the Prosthesis Wearer Heirloom. This will be used later in conjunction with an armor piece, you know, in order to deal with the dexterity problem of this spread crossbow. For now, I head back into the DLC in order to finish up weapon upgrades, then make progress in the areas I visited. Damn, death on some stinky feet. Just in order to collect a few more things and get graces for later. I know it's been months since I last played the game, but damn, I'm kinda out of it sometimes. Anyways, more collection. Progress through areas of the map. And trying to avoid enemy interactions as much as I can. When your skin is made out of paper mache, you're just one hit away from a loading screen. But finally, after getting this one more item, which is the Ancient Dragon Smithing Stone, it is now time to properly start the run. With the final upgrades obtained and my boomstick at plus 25, it is time to beat Legacy Elden Ring. Alright, now since normal Elden Ring is active on the table, the first victim shall be the Draconic Tree Sentinel. The guy along with his horse is pretty big and fat, so he's pretty easy to hit. And I don't know if you've noticed this while I was using the repeating crossbow, only 3 of the entire 10 bolts that I shoot out actually do damage to the enemy. So it doesn't matter if I'm sticking the crossbow right up their butt, only 3 of the bolts actually do damage. I kind of understand why From Software decided to balance the weapon this way, but at the same time it seems kind of lazy. But whatever, it's what I have right now and it's what I gotta work with. You know, playing as a rune level 1 character, I don't know why I picked up this seed right here. But I did it and I accepted the punishment for it. Up next in the fight list is Gold Boy Godfrey. And because of how slow he is, you can kind of see how this fight went. A very straightforward fight. Up next, Morgoth did not have a good time fighting the Yodi Boomstick. Most of the time during this fight, he was just stunned. And in the second phase, there's nothing really to write about. Medieval Shotgun beats Enchanted Cursed Sword. With that, I now have access to the mountaintop of the Giants, which I proceed to just ignore every possible problem that I might encounter. This game really made it easy to just ignore everything with torrents. With that, I now have the grace right before the boss. Before I forget, I have 4 talisman slots now, and that means I need new talisman. And that new talisman is the Ritual Sword Talisman, because more damage equals fun. And with the more damage I do, it means the less time I take fighting the boss. Also, another big thing, it means less ammo I'm using. Thankfully, I can buy all the tiny beast bones I need, but holy moly is expensive. And the only reason why it's expensive is because of the unholy amount of ammo I waste. And when it comes to fighting bosses with extended health, just like fire giants, I find it best that I should really bring out my A game and not fail. Because each failure is pretty expensive. I'm not gonna really be using much status effect arrows right now, as I'm pretty confident in fighting the normal Elden Ring bosses. I'm gonna be saving most of those bolts for the DLC. As I say again, this thing is not very efficient in bolt consumption, but damn, it's pretty satisfying seeing it chunk enemy health away. And so ends the tale of the fire giant, pricked by 1,000 toothpicks. I think it's a bit more accurate to say around like 200 and something toothpicks. Getting through normal Elden Ring pretty quickly. Next up now is the Godskin duo, which I decided to not take the easy way through, and by that I mean I was too lazy to get the recipe for the sleeping pots. Surprisingly, the fight went pretty smoothly. Thankfully, they're usually close to each other, which allows me to hit them multiple times at the same time. The only dread I have right now is making one tiny mistake which can ruin everything. With the fatty essentially soaking up most of the damage, the Godskin duo go down. With the duo defeated, it's time to make my way through the next area. As I said, it was to make my way through the next area. Before I try to go through that type of suffering again, it's time to get a little bit of a refill on bones. A whole lot of thin beast bones. So instead of dealing with the lightning everywhere and the birds as well, I decided to take a little detour and skip all of that. First thing though, I had to do some precise falls in order to reach the elevator here. And after going up it, it's time to follow this specific path. Cautious, it's very slippery. And by going through here, I have reached the Great Bridge. No need to deal with the flying pests or dragon lightning, but I will say it's a lot harder to do this skip than it looks like. Man, that thing be slippery. And now that I'm right here, bada bing, bada boom, the Dragon Sentinel is no more. And with the Draconic Tree Sentinel defeated, the Beast Clergyman is next on the list. All this fight for the first part is just dodging the initial strike and shooting. With Homeless Doggo mode defeated, it's now time for the Edgy Doggo mode. Just one touch is all that is needed to bring me back to the loading screen. And that is exactly what I'm not gonna let it do to me. Because one bad dodge is all it takes for death. But luckily in this fight, it did not happen to me. Just ignore the runes lost over there. With death unleashed now on all the lands between, it's now time for the final stretch of Legacy Elden Ring. Which of course means I have to fight Gideon, and most of this fight was pretty much just a stare down. I had my Boomstick on already, just for the slightest bit of Gideon movement. If he dares cast, he gets a face full of bolts. He's quite a spammy little knob, but he eventually gets his desserts. Now here we are at the burnt doorstep of the giant tree. And that means it's time to fight the WrestleMania champion of Elden Ring. Fighting phase 1 is pretty much the same thing as Gold Shade Godfrey, so I'm just gonna go through that quickly. And now here in phase 2, he's fast, mean, and wants to grab me. Sorry Godfrey, I do not want to be grabbed by you. You know what, here, have a boomstick to the face. Oof, look at that chunky damage. And with that, Horolo has been defeated, and it's time to fight the final boss. At least for Legacy Elden Ring, that is. That means it's time to fight Radagon, and he does not care about the boomstick. He just swatted that thing right out the air. I know the fight is going to take an extended period of time, so it's time to fix my dexterity problem. I can't be relying on my physic flask anymore, so the more permanent solution is getting Okina's mask. This raises my dexterity by like +3, I think. Whatever it is, I know it's enough, especially when it's combined with the dexterity heirloom. At least there's no need for me to use any more physic flask, at least for now. The bootleg boomstick now has a permanent uptime. The only time I can actually deal damage to Radagon with the bootleg boomstick is whenever I catch him lacking, and that's usually right after an attack. And after a numerous amount of deaths, I was actually able to keep up with him. With how slow I am with the damage, this is going to be a pretty long fight. Radagon has been providing me a good amount of opportunities to deal damage, but whether or not I want to take the risk in actually shooting him, it is quite the risky endeavor. But eventually, after hundreds of bolts gone into the ether, Radagon goes down. Now it's time to deal with the Elden Beast. And fortunately, he is such an easier fight compared to Radagon. Golden Beast gives so many opportunities for damage. I was a bit scared I was going to run out of bolts, but good thing I have enough. Just gotta make sure I don't get hit, because one bad move and I'm instantly back to fighting Radagon again. And I really did not want to do that. Thank you From Software for adding torrents into this fight, because it made it a hell of a lot easier dodging the more annoying attacks. Especially when the Elden Beast decides to just spam everything all at once. I've gone through so many bolts you have no idea. The drawbacks of this weapon really hurt, but thankfully, the Elden Beast has been defeated. Okay, the game is done. It's over. Terminado. Terminated. Technically speaking, the run is over, but it ain't over until I say it's over. And let me say, it's a bit far from over. But before I get to what that means, the DLC, I do want to speak a little bit about how the crossbow performed. And let me tell you, the crossbow, holy moly, it hurts to use. Actually, I'll talk about that later. For now, let me give you my thoughts on how I use this thing on the bosses. Right now, the fights have been going pretty smoothly. In fact, here's a little death count for you. In this middle part of the journey, the only problem I really had against any of the bosses was Radagon. And that's mostly because, well, rune level 1. I'm so much more used to having so much health compared to what I have right now. Being rune level 1 really keeps you on your toes. You pretty much have to strive for perfection on all these fights. And unfortunately, in the pursuit of perfection, there will always be failure. But hey, it's been manageable, so I can't complain. And now that we're here around the midpoint of this video, and with a piece of my mind being spoken, it is now time to challenge the DLC. And during the time of which I beat the game, I wish I did not do the DLC. Because, oh boy, you'll see soon enough. Now before we get into the meaty part of the DLC, here's a few quick things to finish up and collect. One example is this big game hunting here for Shadow Tree fragments. I also wanted to get the Power Within crystal tier, but due to the amount of ammo I waste, it was not worth it. There's also NPC fights that I have to deal with in order to have a smooth boss rush later. I really hate dealing with these guys. They're either incredibly cunning or a confident idiot. Thanks From Software for making this easy. Had to deal with Dragon Man next, but thankfully he's not that bright in this fight. With Dragon Man down, the Jagged Peak is now open for business. And with one last Hippo down, I believe that's good enough for the Shadow Tree fragment department. Alright, one last chain of events before I properly tackle the DLC. And that is my tiny quest of getting Frostbolts, which requires me to fight my way through the Carrion Manor. I buy it off this merchant that is right after the boss. And with that in inventory, it's time to deal with Commander Nile. His little ghosty buddies were not that difficult to take down. Surprising though, because they are incredibly intimidating. And once they're out of the fight, Commander Nile just spammed the same attack. Literally just over and over. I don't ever recall him ever spamming his jump attack this often. But whatever. It's an easy win. We take those. With that over, I head into the concentrated snowfield. Then get to farming some crystal buds for a bit. Alrighty, now it's time to fight Shadow the Ur Tree bosses. And what better way to start than with the Shadow Tree avatar. This giant edgy sunflower is big and thorny. And pretty unfair at times, I'm not gonna lie. Nothing some good old Boomstick can't deal with. Here I use the more normal bolts at the beginning in order to conserve that precious ammo. And now in phase 2 and onwards, it's all about the fire damage. Yep, it's all about those dragon breath rounds. Phase 2 didn't really change much of the fight, except he's more thorny than before. In phase 3, aka the final phase, the tactics didn't really change much, except now I just have to dodge explosions. And holy moly, it really wanted to explode on me in this phase. In its final moments it tried to run me down, but eventually the poison inflicted on it killed it. And with that, one DLC boss down, but many more to go. Now who is next on the hit list? I know, why not Romina, Saint of the Bud, and also professional roll catcher. Thankfully this way of dying didn't really happen much. Now Romina has a pretty big profile, which makes hitting with the spread crossbow a tad bit easier. But unfortunately for me, and pretty much all the bosses going forward, she is incredibly chunky, so a whole lot of ammo is going to be wasted. For the first phase, I just had to be an opportunist, and I usually just attacked after she attacked. Really sucks that I have to reload this crossbow in order to shoot it. It's almost always a risk, and very much a wasted attack opportunity. Second phase just made the fight a whole lot easier. More chances for attacks. It really hurts my heart to see all that ammo wasted and get phased right through the boss. But finally, after a bit of bleeding and falling back into frost arrows, Romina goes down. With one of the steps to beating the DLC finished, it's time to head into the Stone Coffin Fissure. Now it's time to fight the Frosty Sludge Knight, who I have died more to the horse rather than the knight. Peterson Knight loves to drift a lot, which was the best time for me to attack. Fortunately for me, he was pretty predictable, which allowed me to anticipate his movement. I actually had to free aim a lot in this battle because locking on for some reason screwed up my shots. The only thing I feared the most in this fight was his giant AoE frost flames. That would catch me a few times, and that of course would lead to my death. But finally, after enough tactical blunders, with the boss's horse drifting, and also intimidating me, the boss walking towards me. I hate it when they do that. The night has been fallen. Now seems like a good time to do a bit of side questing. First on the list is Theolier's quest, so he can help me later. He's really not that useful, but at least he runs a good distraction. Next up, it's hunting people with Lady Letta, which the only one I help her with is with the horn scent. I just want to make my life a bit easier later in the NPC showdown. And for the final part of the quest, I have to betray Letta. I partner up with Sir Ansbach in order to take her down. It's also nice to know that Ansbach uses a shotgun bow. That spread attack is absolutely lovely. The problem though is that it suffers the same hit registration as the spread crossbow. And with Letta defeated by a rain of bolts and arrows, that should be enough questing for now. Up next, it's time to deal with one of the pain in the bums in the DLC. I died a lot of times against Snaky Boy Mesmer, and it was usually just from this one attack. Other times it was just due to carelessness. After a good amount of tries, I decided to go out and upgrade my arsenal. And since I just get one tap to buy pretty much everything in the DLC, it's time to get the red feathered branch sword talisman. An easy way to trigger it is with seppuku. But that wasn't enough, so I had to use Assassin's Gambit to get me into the proper health to get that bonus damage. Since I got the red branch sword talisman, I might as well get the shield equivalent. It's only a 5% increase to damage and low health, but hey, it helps. And also I did a little pickup on the winged crystal tier, just to make sure that my equip load is always on low weights. There's one thing I can credit to saving me so many times in this run. It is the light roll. And after dying so many times, and of course shaking off the rust I have on me, I can read Mesmer like a damn book. I will no longer be caught lacking in this fight, and the Boomstick shall prevail. You know, I haven't said it before, but one of the worst parts of fighting with this spread crossbow is the fact that I have to go into my equipment menu to swap out bolts. Phase 1 done, and now it's up to Phase 2. Already off to a great start with his most dangerous attack. In this phase, his snake form leaves him much more vulnerable, and that of course means the best time for damage. You know, I might curse this weapon for its inaccuracy, but against Mesmer it actually hits pretty well. And finally Mesmer is defeated after a lot of tries. It's now time for me to set myself up for success against a certain mother. And that of course is Metter, the mother of the creepy crawlies. Metter is huge, and that means very easy hitting. I can pretty much just ignore the spread of the crossbow just because of how big the boss is. Poor Metter. Her biggest weakness is ranged attacks. Well, Phase 1 was easy, but now it's up to Phase 2. Here in Phase 2, there's only one specific attack to look out for. There's her giant Mega Laser, which I just Raptor of the Mists right through. Pretty much the only reason why I got the Astral War. With that attack over, danger is pretty much gone. Now it's up to easy shooting. And now with Metter being deleted from this world, the next fight is up against the Divine Beast Dancing Lion. And because I don't remember the timings of some of its attacks, it has led to unfortunate deaths. Aside from suffering failure a few times, fighting the Dancing Lion was not trivial, but a lot easier than expected. Each Boomstick shot is pretty much an automatic headshot because of where the lock-on is, so that meant some pretty big damage. If only the other DLC boss fights was this easy. And now that the dancing duet has been defeated, now it's time to burn down a perfectly normal looking tree in order to gain access to the final area of the DLC. I tried to sneakily make my way through all of Inner Limb, and with the Assassin's Gambit Astral War, it went pretty well. That is, of course, until I reached the bird golems. They really do not care about me being slightly transparent. It was time to run this part the old-fashioned way, just a lot of panic rolling. After that, I just used the Gambit again in order to make my way through. All easy peasy. Possibly one of the best Astral Wars, I'll tell you what. And now it's time for the NPC showdown, which was just a whole lot of booms from the medieval Boomstick. The editing made it look kinda easy, but it was anything but easy. And now that I'm at the doorstep of the final boss of the DLC, there's still a few things I need to do before I finish it all. And that is, of course, fighting Malenia. So I'm pretty sure you know the deal and process of this. Deal with the auto-aim archers, light up a dumb little candle, make my way down the Halleck tree, which Assassin's Gambit makes this pretty easy. Still gotta be careful though, because if I'm too close, they'll still attack me. Afterwards, deal with Lorette. As I said, afterwards, deal with the horse hoe. Proceed to continue my way through. Unfortunately, had to get down and dirty in the rocks. And lastly, deal with the auto-aim kindred of rocks. I don't know how I lived, but I'm happy. And now all that happiness has turned into an unyielding rage. And finally, after all that, it's time to fight against Malenia. But unfortunately, because I haven't played in months, still pretty rusty. So it is quite the learning experience that I had to go through. Fun fact, you can shoot her without making her dodge with the crossbow. Bad news though, the spread crossbow is pretty inaccurate. Also the waterfall dance, instant death as always. For Malenia phase 1, attacks were just baited out. I tried to poison her to deal at least a little bit more bonus damage, but her poison and rot resist is way high up, and that means trying to afflict her with the spread crossbow was not doable. Too much bolts per shot to even keep up the attempt to afflict her. The only thing I really had to keep an eye out for was waterfowl. With her health now getting pretty low, I used the no lock on approach to deal damage. And after making sure that my inventory of bolts is fine, it's time to start phase 2. And now in this phase, it was all about status affliction. Gotta do the big shots against the big scary rotting woman. All there is to do now is shoot and dodge. And I just realized this post-editing, I took a lot of risks that I'm not comfortable with. But once she starts to use Scarlet Aeonia again, it is pretty much now game over. The Rot Uzi has been cleansed from this world. And after making sure I'm stocked up with bones and bolts, I have now decided to go fight Bale. Yep, no final boss yet, just a giant dragon that is too angry to die. I died a good amount of times against Bale, and some of them are very unfortunate. I really hate that I panicked there. Worry not though, because persistence is key to victory. Bale is a pretty big boy, so shots just had to be in his general direction in order to hit. Problem though, he's a chunky boy when it comes to health. And a whole lot of enemy health means a whole lot of ammo wasted on my end. With the boss now entering phase 2, it's time to use the big boy bolt. The good part of this fight was just baiting out his close range flame attack, and also sticking to his left side as long as I could. And when the boss decides to fly up in the air and use whatever flavor attack it decides to use, it's all about dodging and hoping. Hoping and dodging. And finally, after a good 5 minutes of fighting, Bale goes down. And with that over, it is time to finalize this challenge run. To fight Concert Radon with the bootlegged Boomstick blunderbuss thing that I have. After getting my tries, I decided it was a good time to get a new helmet. An armor piece I want increases dexterity just like the Okina's helmet. The difference is that it's lighter, has a better dexterity amount that it gives, but it ruins the efficiency of the Crimson Tears. Well, ain't it a good thing that I never upgraded that? And after a bit of weapon testing, I have decided that the Arrow Soaring Sting Talisman is now weaker compared to the Blue Dancer's Talisman. The decrease in weight of my helmet actually brought my damage up because of that. The Blue Dancer's Charm is now back on the menu, boys. Last thing now, I went out and got the Golden Epitaph to increase my damage by even a little tiny bit. Damn, with the amount of time I spent fighting Radon, it seems like I'm getting desperate. Now it's time to continue and keep on grinding the final boss of the DLC. Radon's first phase is always the simple part of the fight. The attacks are easy to understand and also provides easy response to them. And the only thing I should focus to look out for is the Gravity Suck ability. I got caught in it, but I didn't die, which was an absolute blessing. It also shows that attack is still inconsistent damage-wise. First phase was easy and pretty clean, except for the gravity part. But now it's time for second phase, the biggest pain in the game. The absolute light show that is Consort Radon Phase 2. In the first part of the fight I used the more straightforward damage dealing bolts. And now that Radon has a twink on his shoulder, it's time to cause afflictions. Just one little touch of any of the light pillars he spawns, I'm gone. Best opportunity for damage is whenever he tries to nuke me. If it's the small nuke, it's a one easy hit or reload. If it's the Michaela nuke, 2 easy hits. I'm not worried about most of his attacks except for one. And it's not the fancy swordplay combo that he likes to use when he's pretty low on health. And it's not even the double swipes either. My beef is with his sidestep clone attack. I can never consistently dodge it. Thankfully in the victory run, he only used it 3 times. Once in the very beginning, and 2 right here near the very end. So finally, after 5 minutes and 40 seconds of fighting, Consort Radon is complete. Completely dead. Oh my lord, it took so long fighting Consort Radon. Let me just pop out the death count. That is a big number, and most of that is because of Radon. The number 128 is how many times I failed against Radon. The second most death count I had against the boss was Mesmer at around 60. The difference is twice. Radon is not an easy fight. In real life, it took me like 4 nights to actually beat him. I think the time it took to beat him is pretty comparable compared to when the first time I fought him. Well, that is it everyone. I have beat the Elden Ring DLC with the bootleg Boomstick. It was pretty fun, all the way until I reached Radon. The boss second to Radon in the suffering scale. For me, it's either Baal or the Erdtree avatar. But at least it wasn't as bad as fighting bloody Radon. At least the other fights were just a normal amount of deaths. But finally, I do not have to use the spread crossbow anymore. God, the amount of ammo I wasted and all the farming I've done. Just look at this. It took so long trying to beat this challenge run. But now it's finally over, and I bid farewell. But one last thing before the outro. I'm gonna start streaming again. It's probably gonna be a lower amount compared to what I did before. But hey, at least I'm gonna stream. It's going to be both on YouTube and Twitch, so look out for that. I'm probably going to start the day before or after I upload this video. So with all that over with, this has been Warnight Gamer 4, and make sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, and click the bell notification for alerts when I post a new video, or when I live stream. And of course, thank you for watching this video and my previous videos if you have as well. Ciao.